And we are back, and I appreciate you hanging in with me here. We are having some fun today with all of our technical expertise. Um, I'm not sure how all this is working, but okay, good. I'll close that. Bear with me, folks. We're going to get to our John Mangum interview next. And then in about 20 minutes, Ian Robbins and I are going to go into this landlord relief thing. So do not give up. I'm trying to close this. There we go. And now I'm going to move this over to here. Yes, that's great. And it's working. Yay. All right, victory. Now, our next guest is well. I'll explain to you who he is. But again, I want you to understand that if you own a bunch of property free and clear, and that is your goal, then that's fine. I personally am comfortable with a higher level of debt with than that, and when I can borrow it at what did Peter say? 2.875%, under 3% on a 30-year fixed rate refinance. That is outrageous. That is off the hook. And I'm just here to tell you that if you borrow, and by the way, it's 100% tax free. Remember that. Who's going to pay this back? Not you. The tenant is going to pay it back. So I'm just saying there are options out there. So let's talk to our friend John Mangum. Remember, we've been talking about Caladraxco, and we're now at the R for refinance. You can say this was the refinance week on the real estate coffee break. So here it comes. I'm going to share screen with you, and then we're going to let her rip. And hey, that worked. This technology business is great. Uh, Margie, why are you laughing at me? There's cackling going on in the background. I don't appreciate that. Hey, I am a highly trained broadcast professional. Don't try this at home. Okay. So, um, here is our interview. Look how sleepy I look there. I have my eyes closed. Let's listen to the wisdom of John Mangum, and you'll find out why in just a second. Great advice. And we are back once again with our very special guest, John Mangum, CPA, realtor extraordinaire, investor of the world, and syndicator and prognosticator. John, what don't you do?
Uh, John, that's an interesting question. Between keeping the plate spinning and the balls in the air, one of my friends taught me a new little element when we talk about keeping all the balls in the air.
Yeah.
He said, and he was in the military, he said he worked for a general, and the general said, this gentleman's ability to keep all the balls in the air and at the correct height was impressive.
Right.
So it's not just random, it's you got to know what you're doing.
Well,
John,
I'm reminded of the scene in the all-time great movie Patton, where the aide goes up to Patton and says, General, sometimes the men don't know when you're kidding and when you're not. And he says to the aide privately, it's not important for them to know. It's only important for me to know. So you're not kidding about Caladraxco, are you?
So Caladraxco is real. It'll continue to be real, and it'll continue to be complete until we start to see some new things coming down the pike, which probably we won't even get an inkling until the middle of 2021 of what people are kicking around in terms of tax law changes. And knowing where we're coming from, where we have come from, is valuable no matter how we go forward. Even if all of the elements of Caladraxco aren't there in the future. If something goes away, still it's this great platform, it's this great base, and a lot of people, longtime experienced real estate investors, have benefited from all the aspects. So when you've got 10 tentacles and you take one away, you've still got plenty of reasons to be involved in real estate. And to kind of catch us up, cash flow, C, A is appreciation, leverage, depreciation. We're getting ready to go to R, refinance, I believe.
I think you're right.
So
and
those,
this whole thing sort of reminds me of a lizard. If you pop off the tail, he'll grow a new one.
well, and I have said repeatedly, we small guys, we who work in residential single family houses,
Right.
for years the world has looked askance at what we do, but our margins are pretty darn good. And here's a news flash today in the press. JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, introduces a single family consultation advisory division. JLL, the big commercial brokers,
Right.
national, international. Now there's several people named in the article heading up the single family advisory group.
I don't
We
get
have
it.
legitimacy.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, that's us.
that's us. And John, only 3% of the single family rental housing stock is owned at an institutional level. And you contrast that to office buildings and hotels and big stuff.
Sure.
There is room for the regular guys, the small guys, to be invested in single family real estate.
This
One
is
here.
something, yeah,
Yep.
this is something I heard repeatedly. And you and I have talked about this new tax relief bill that President Trump signed that has $25 billion in it for landlord and tenant relief. And their point, his point, and the Congress's point was mom and pop landlords make up a huge percentage of owners or managers of our nation's rental housing stock. And they need help. And looks like we may get some. So I hope we do anyway.
We took a big hit last year. Tenants got to stop paying rent, but not a single bank called me and said, hey, just don't pay the mortgage for a few months. We had to keep paying. So,
John, I proposed a moratorium, a federally CDC required moratorium on property taxes and insurance payments. That was not well received in the county assessor offices.
The proverbial lead balloon. Yep.
Oh dear. Well, anyway, you're right. There are a lot of benefits of owning real estate, and Cal Draxco is one of the ways of looking at it. Today we're talking about refinancing, and I don't get it. If I've just bought a house, how can I refinance it? I mean, when does refinancing come into play?
So, John, there are probably several times when refinancing makes sense. If you got a house below market, if you got a really good deal, and whether you put all cash in or you got some kind of a mortgage, or you got a mortgage, you got an owner finance transaction, if you go clean up that house, make some improvements of the ilk that we've discussed in previous seminars, previous sessions, and you add value to the house, most banks don't want you to refinance within 12 months. They won't give you credit for that value. But if you can hang tight and get to the 13th month, you refinance, you get a new appraisal. The house that you bought for 100 and you put 10 or 15 in might be worth 150. And when you refinance at that 150 level, you're going to get back some of the cash that you put in for making the improvements. Another time to refinance is when there's a disparity in the interest rate structure, which I'm going to wave the flag and ring the bell. That's right now. We have seen rates, and what we see in the popular press are rates for primary residence. You can buy a home and pay a mortgage, pay an interest rate down in the mid twos,
Isn't that
maybe even
amazing?
the lower twos.
Yeah.
The way that translates into rental property today, and we talked about the institutional investors who are legitimizing the residential detached single family rental product. The way it translates is more lenders have become comfortable with lending on rental houses, not at 90% loan to value, but certainly at 75, certainly at 70, maybe 80 if you've got some track record,
Yeah.
or if you have a portfolio. I've seen plenty of cases where people will say, John, you go buy some houses, and after you fix up a couple and get them rented and increase the value, you bring us your little portfolio of 3, 4, 5 houses, and we'll give you a blanket loan. And today's interest rates, John, start with a 4, 4.5,
Wow.
4.75. So if you owned rental property a few years ago, when you thought you had a great rate at 6.5%, and today you can go get 4.5%, it can make sense, especially if you intend to continue receiving the cash flow on that rental property. You lower your monthly payment, you increase your cash flow. Hopefully, and this goes back to cash flow, hopefully you're pushing your rent rates every year. We continue to see rents rise. So the bigger the gap you can create between what your mortgage payment is and your rents continue to tick up, now you're starting to reach that point where you can think about retiring.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that 13th month, which is sort of a reset, or I think they call that seasoning.
Thank you.
And that fits in perfectly with something you and I've talked about many times, which is buying one house a year, getting that house. We talked about appreciation, we talked about natural appreciation, and we talked about forced appreciation. And I don't know if you saw, but the numbers came out, I think 48 hours ago, that said for calendar year 2020, residential single family home prices were up 7.8%.
I've heard numbers, John, ranging in the 5 to 9 range. And some of the experts out there are suggesting that they're going to go up another 5 to 7% in 2021.
Well, the predictions for 2020 were all around 1.5 and 2, and maybe as high as 2.5. And look what happened. So very interesting, and something we'll keep an eye on. Let me ask you this. How does if you have a rental property, and let's say you've had it for many years, you say put a 15-year mortgage on it when you bought it, and you paid that off to zero, and now you go refinance at 70% and you pull out this big chunk of cash. Does it matter what you do? I'm talking about now the deductibility of the interest on the payments on that new refinanced mortgage. Does it matter if you put that back into the house in terms of improvements or repairs, or what if you want to use that money for other investing purposes?
So, John, if you can trace that money to another investment, you can deduct that interest. But the reality is, when you borrow money on a property and it's secured by the property, the general rule is you can deduct the interest associated with it. So Uncle Sam and the Georgia Department of Revenue are helping you make that payment. We know the tenant helps us, that's part of cash flow, but also the government is helping us with those payments because we can deduct. And so if you had that house for 15 years and you realized that you were in a position where you could pull the cash out, and I'll give you the Stephen Covey maxim, start with the end in mind.
Right.
If you take that cash out, make sure you know what you're going to do with it, because it costs you money. The financing fees are money and the monthly payments are money.
That's right.
And so be sure you know what you're going to do with that cash. Make sure that cash can go to work for you. But can you deduct the interest? Of course you can. Can you write that off and get a government? It's not a subsidy, that's the wrong word, but can you get some support? Absolutely. So benefits of refinancing, deductibility today, and I have combed through my portfolio, part of my annual review, and I've got some interest rates down at 6.1% that I thought, boy, these rates are great. And now I'm having to evaluate whether, what's my horizon? How long will I hold? Should I refinance? Because there's a cost.
Yep.
But if I'm going to hold that for more than about 3 or 4 years, and then how long will those rates hold? Some banks will give you that rate for 3 to 5 years, but not for 15.
Right.
And so you've got to look at all the factors.
Well, let me ask you one final question. I've got to let you go. I talked earlier it was last week with our friend Peter Burke at Reliant Mortgage Solutions, one of our sponsors here on the Coffee Break. And he said that he has been stunned by the number of real estate investors that now own their portfolio free and clear of any debt. And I said, why don't these people refinance and pull money out at historically low interest rates? Because over a 15 or a 20-year period, and we know we can use Fannie and Freddie type loans to get up to 10 loans, not to mention your next personal residence. Why would these people want to adopt what I call the Dave Ramsey kindergarten school of finance, where all debt is bad, don't even have a credit card? What is your take on why so many people are apparently carrying around a lot of equity in their properties?
Well, John, whether you put your money in the proverbial piggy bank, the mattress, or the bank, where the bank, you're going to make about 0.5%,
Sure.
Whatever the number is.
Yep.
The long-term perspective, and I appreciate personal goals, and you've got to be true to your own goals. But if you're going to retire one day and you're going to live on the cash flow, if you've only got 5 rental houses at $1,000 or $1,200 a month, and you need $5,000 a month to live on, you can't be making mortgage payments.
That's true.
And if you want to travel and get out of the rat race and whatnot. Now, if you've got 15 rental houses and you need $5,000 a month, then the positive cash flow can help you. And I think there's a balance. I don't think that being totally debt-free is entirely the right answer. And if you look at the increase in the residential housing market this past year, 7+%, and potentially that again next year. In that environment, I want as much in my basket. I want to be holding as much real estate, because if I had $1 million in houses and $800,000 in mortgages,
yep,
and that went up 7%, then I got $70,000 of value, and my mortgage stayed right where it was.
That's a pretty good return on investment.
That's a pretty darn good return on my 200. Right, I got 70
cash.
on my.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yep.
So
but
I don't know
John,
anybody else getting 35% out there. So
and you and I both do this, I know, but let's dish up the big one, the big nugget that we always save for last, and I'm going to turn it around. When you refinance, and you've got to you live with a CPA, I understand.
I sleep with my CPA.
When you go refinance and you pull out $100,000 cash, how much do you set aside to pay taxes with?
0.
And tell me why.
Because it's not an event of sale. The taxes only occur when you sell the property. And there are 2 ways to avoid that. One is the John Adams method, never sell. And the other is the John Mangum method, exchange.
And 31 exchange. So of course, I know the answer, and I like this one a lot. But if you're in a growth mode, you may not refinance your first house when you're still on your first one. But when you're in two or three and you're in a growth mode and you're really building a portfolio, you're going to go to 10 houses, except there's not really any limit. Couldn't you go to 20?
Sure.
Couldn't you go to 30? And when things are going well, you pull the cash out so that you can go use that cash as a tool to expand your portfolio.
Yep.
And when you take that cash out, there's no tax due. There's still gain sitting inside your property. To be clear, if you were to sell it, you might sell it, pay off the mortgage, and then have to pay the taxes and have no money from the sale.
That's right.
So when you take the cash out on the refinance, you're getting a payday.
It's in your hand.
And you want to treat that money carefully. You don't want to just go take the trip around the world. Now, can you spend a little bit of it? Can you go buy a car? Can you do something nice? Sure. Of course. But you want to be reasonable. One of the biggest benefits of refinance, and one of the reasons we've got it smack in the middle of Caladraxco, is because when you take the money out, it's all yours and it's not taxable.
Well, I will never forget in your last presentation on depreciation and other tax benefits, as an example, you used the car driving off the lot of the new car and the owner throwing $1,000 bills out as he drives off the lot, because that vehicle has lost a lot of value just because you drove it off the lot. Yep. And very interesting how all of these benefits and features come together to make an interesting platform for investing. And I just, on behalf of the members here at the Real Estate Coffee Break, want to thank you. We've got one more week that we're going to be going to, and that's an exciting one. I can't wait to hear about it. I know there have been some changes, but John Mangum, we appreciate, as always, your weighing in. If somebody, your day job is working with Starker Services as a qualified intermediary for 1031s. That's a mouthful. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, I know you used to have a brochure in a black cover that was a real helpful sort of a summary of what a 1031 exchange was. And I'm hoping there it is. If somebody wanted to get a copy of that, either online or actually directly from you, how could they get in touch with you?
John, I appreciate you asking. And of course, it's a prelude to our segment that we'll do on 1031 exchanges. But I'm gonna give the big number, the 800 number, 800-332-1031.
Hey, I know that number.
Or, of course, send me an email, whether you reach me or any of my team at Starker. Send me an email at jmangum, M-A-N-G-H-A-M, jmangum @starker.com, and just say, please send the brochure. And we'll email you a PDF copy, or we'll put a hard copy in the mail, whatever you'd like.
That's super. And John, we appreciate that. You have truly done a yeoman's job of educating real estate investors and real estate professionals all over the Southeast. And you are building up for yourself treasures in heaven. How about that?
John, I appreciate it.
And you can't exchange out of those.
Well, it's always an honor to be on the show with you. I appreciate being here, and I look forward to the next one. Whenever the time is right, I'll be available.
I'm excited about it. John Mangum, thank you, sir. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Okay. What a very interesting presentation. John Mangum talking about strategies for refinancing. Now, I just got a chat from, and I hope Ian Robbins is going to join me here. I just got a chat from one of our viewers here. Hello, Ian. How are you, my friend?
Great, John. Can you see me okay?
You look marvelous. May I say that about you?
I appreciate that. You look mighty fine and dandy
Well,
today, too, sir.
I've always said it's better to look good than it is to feel good. And we do, don't we?
We do both, we hope.
Okay. The answer, what I wanted to share with everybody is, and Ian, I think I mentioned this to you, that we are going to begin podcasting the Real Estate Coffee Break, both hours. It is currently available on Apple iTunes podcast. Now, this is confusing to me because I'm not an Apple person, but Ian, you are an Apple iPod person.
I am, and I don't do very much on podcasts, but I have started doing that. And again, I have my kids that can help me get all hooked up.
That's good. Will Seth become the Coffee Break senior technical advisor on the podcast?
Yes, he will. And
Okay.
this is a great way. This is a great way to get my child to get some financial education. So I appreciate it as a way of working that angle. Thank you.
By the way, I had the good fortune to meet Ian's son, Seth, who is a very bright and a very sharp young man who takes after his dad. He looks like his mom, but he takes after his dad. And
he's got blue hair.
Yeah. There you go. I have every reason to believe he will be super successful, just like you have been. So, but the two that we're on right now, and Margie's just getting this all set up, but we're on Apple Podcast, which used to be iTunes Podcast, but that is the #1 podcast directory in the world, according to something I saw. And the second, #2, is Google Podcast. We have not yet been successful in being listed on Google Podcast. Now, you can go to Apple Podcast right now and search for the Real Estate Coffee Break, and you will see past episodes. And I think you can subscribe there, and it will automatically send them to you every week as they're posted. But we're still learning about this thing. The second one we're working on right now is Google Podcasts. And then the third one is Stitcher. And I'm not familiar with Stitcher, but apparently it is a very popular podcast directory, sort of like Apple Podcasts. All right, Margie says Stitcher and Apple are ready.
We don't have all the old programs up yet, but we will.
We do not have all the old programs up yet,
we might.
But we will. So,
but they could go to realestatecoffeebreak.com/podcasts with an S.
Okay, if you go to realestatecoffeebreak.com/podcasts with an S on the end. PODCASTS, there will be something there. I don't know what's there. Margie just told me to tell everybody to go there. So, so much for that. Ian, you and I have, wait, stop. We have a lot to talk about. I can't get past this. We don't need an intermission. Good grief. All right, here we are. And I'm going to, Ian, we need to jump right in. We've got 25 minutes to cover about 3 hours worth of material. Do you think we can do that?
I think we'll just keep it very simple and absolutely give good value for today. Yes.
All right, very good. Well, let's start. My longtime friend and mutual friend of Dykes Bodiford and a lot of other people is George Kelichek. George is a great guy who has, at one time, I think he worked like for Toyota or something like that. Anyway, he has been self-employed and invests in real estate. He is a shaker and a mover. and he keeps me supplied with information, Ian. He has been kind enough to send some information this week about landlord relief, which Ian and I are going to cover right now. Then we will jump into the big three. So let's just go right ahead and do that. And this is from an article that George Kelichek sent to me yesterday. And it's from CNBC, which I hope is an authoritative source. Obviously, we will see very quickly. This is going to come together very quickly. But let's read through this. The first point here is that in the stimulus package signed into law last month, I think it was December 27th, the CDC ban on certain evictions was extended through January, and a $25 billion pot of money. By the way, for you and me, for those of you from Smyrna, 25 billion is the same as $25,000 million.
Wow, that's a remarkable amount of money.
I can get by on a very small portion of that, which I hope to get. So, Ian, $25 billion, and this was established for renters struggling amid the health and economic crisis. I would beg to differ. I don't think the renters have been struggling. I think the landlords have been struggling. If the tenants didn't want to pay, Ian, all they had to do was fill out a declaration saying, I can't pay.
But you know what, John? By knowing about that declaration and now knowing about this $25 billion pot of money, I think they can first apply for that before they try to not pay us landlords.
Well, let me tell you what we're going to do. Let's read through this, but I think you will agree with me that this is going to be good for landlords. That money will help to keep many of the 14 million Americans who are behind on their rent. And Ian, you and I just heard John Mangum say they took a pretty good hit last year. We have been very fortunate. I don't think I have lost a single penny due to COVID. We have had to do some accommodations. We have had people split their rent, and I'm happy to do that, but I just want I got to have the rent. So, and you and I have talked about that, Ian. 14 million Americans who are behind on their rent in their homes during the coldest months of the year. Oh, it's just awful. And while a pandemic rages, still housing advocates say that more money is needed by one estimate. After 10 months of record job losses and business shutdowns, rental arrears in the I don't believe it's 70 billion. That's a lot of money. So who knows? Maybe it is. So we're talking about $25 billion, and you need to remember that's what's in this pot. And we are now getting a comment from a visiting law professor. Ready? While this is a critical start, these provisions will not end the eviction crisis and will not help all renters. So, and this is some Emily lady who is a visiting law professor. I don't know. I don't know anything about her. Now that Democrats are in control of Congress, additional relief measures for renters stand a better chance of materializing. These people don't realize that when they say additional help for renters, what they really mean is additional help for landlords. Democrats in May called for $100 billion, holy mackerel, dollars in housing assistance and a 12-month eviction moratorium. No, we'd have to have 12 times 25 for that. That would have to be 300 billion. Ian, a billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Absolutely. That's a remarkable amount of money.
It is. So for now, what you and I need to know, and what everybody at home needs to know, is that the current pot is 25 billion. So how do we get it? Watch this. There's two issues. One is eligibility, and the second is the procedure for applying. So, and this information, Ian, you and I are going to this afternoon send out an email to everybody giving them this information. So don't anybody send me a note saying, how do I apply? Because I've gotten 50 how do I applies in the last week. And this will tell you to qualify at least. Now, remember, they're talking to renters here. They're not talking to landlords, but we're sort of listening in. Okay. To qualify for assistance, at least one member of the rental household has to be eligible for unemployment benefits or attest in writing that they've lost income or incurred significant expenses due to the pandemic. I think that pretty much covers almost everyone in America.
Sounds like it. Yes, indeed.
I mean, Ian, who would not be able to honestly say, I have incurred significant expense due to the pandemic? I mean, Margie and I have spent a fortune on hand sanitizer.
And it used to not be available. Now it's everywhere. Thank goodness.
I know. But I paid a full $1 at the dollar store and got one of those little ones that I carried around. I don't use it. You know, I have decided, Ian, to market my own brand. I found out that the hand sanitizer is about 90% alcohol.
Okay.
And I have added a lime flavor to hand sanitizer, and I use it to sort of spike up my gin and tonic in the afternoon. Just
sounds
telling
like a
you.
good plan. Hey, you know what? We're all adapting. That sounds wonderful.
That's right. We're all adapting. Thank you. You will also need to demonstrate a risk of homelessness, which may include a past due rent or utility notice. So this is beginning, Ian, to sound to me a lot like the original declaration.
It does look like that, but I see a problem there because it's saying that my past due rent notice is actually an invitation for them to get the money. And so it's a catch-22.
Well, watch what happens, because we're getting there. In addition, your income level for 2020 can't exceed 80% of your area's median income. Those states have been directed to prioritize applicants who fall at 50% or lower, as well as those who've been out of work for 90 days or more. So there are some targets here, but it sort of sounds to me like they're going to be a little bit loosey-goosey. Now, here's the most important part, and everybody buckle your seatbelts. Am I eligible? Blah, blah, blah. We just talked about that. Oh, are the funds available now? And the answer is no. The Treasury has not dispersed the funds yet. By the way, I got my $1,200 yesterday.
Wow, that's great.
I immediately ran out and
what a
had
factory.
a really nice dinner.
Good.
$1,200, you can eat well. So it's gone now, but it sure did taste good. States will have the funds by January 20th. Okay. So we now know that, one, we're not missing out yet because the fund's not even here yet, and probably won't be until very shortly before January 20th. But the procedure is going to be put in place probably in the next 7 days. So we're finally at the most important part. How do I apply? Now, remember, they're talking to renters, but I think we as landlords should proactively go to our tenants and help them. And here's where the rubber meets the road. How do I apply? Where or how to apply will vary by city. In other words, how could we make this process more confusing? And I don't see how they could. You know, if I mean, like there are 159 counties in Georgia. It would be one thing to say, oh, well, we're going to say that every county health department will coordinate. So everybody would know just to call the Cobb County Health Department or the Gwinnett County Health. No. We're going to make Lawrenceville do one thing. We're going to make Decatur do something else. And we're going to have is Vinings a city or is it just an area?
I think it's an area.
Well, then it wouldn't count. But many areas have existing rental assistance funds, and it will be through one of these that the tenant will apply for the new aid. In other cases, new programs will be created to disperse the money. So, Ian, it is incumbent on you and me as the representative of the hundreds and hundreds of people who are listening and watching right now to get this information and get it out to them as quickly as possible. Do you accept the challenge? Ian, I'm throwing down the gauntlet.
I accept the challenge, John, and I'm happy to serve.
All right, very good. So look at this. Renters should contact local housing groups. I got news. I'm not going to wait on my renters to do this. I'm going to contact the local housing groups. You guys, those of you that are just mind-numbed robots, you don't need to think for yourself because that's what Ian and I do for you. Okay? And we will control the vertical. We will control the horizontal. Please do not adjust your television set. Okay? Or you can call the local 211-311. I thought that was called before you dig. I don't know what that is. But anyway, identify program.
811.
Oh, is that 811?
I think so, yes.
All right. I was watching one of these police shows the other day, and somebody got shot, and another person yelled, "Does anybody know the number for 911?"
Absolutely. Life is not logical.
Look at the next line, Ian. Your landlord can also apply for you, but must get your signature and provide you with a copy of the application. Ian, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to proactively go to each of my tenants and tell them that the new procedure is that we, Real Estate Services, will apply for them because we have the proper paperwork, we know the procedure, we know the agency, and we want to make sure they get a credit for every penny that is designated for their account.
Okay, but I see a problem with that, John.
Tell me about it.
Well, I understand 25 billion is a lot of money, and I totally get that. Now you got 50 states, so now it's a lot lower number.
Yeah, it's only $500 million.
But it's less than the 25 billion. So then we have a big line, a huge line. And I wouldn't want to say to my customers that I'm going to help them get the money because it's a government-run program. What I would say is, here's some paperwork, sign it, and I'll turn it in, and we'll all wait together. But in the meantime, I'm going to still go forward with my process because I can't be waiting for anyone because I have to do and treat everybody the same. I have to do what I'm going to do, but I will indeed help you with this application, but I don't know when the money's going to come.
As always, Ian, you are a voice of caution and wisdom, speaking into the darkness, bringing light where there is no light. You're
but I got to go because I'm going on the front of the line because if there's $500 million in Georgia, I want to get my share.
Now, I'm just going to tell my tenants that the procedure is that they sign a piece of paper that says we're authorized to do this on their behalf. And what that means is the check is going to come to me. The check is not going to go to them.
I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Huh?
We don't know that either, because
I'm just telling you, I'm going to rig the system so the check comes to me, so I can go to Jimmy the renter and say, Jimmy, you've been awarded 12 months. You're 6 months behind. And if you'll just sign the back of this check, we will co-endorse it, and you'll be caught up for the last 6 and prepaid for the next 6.
I hope that's possible, but again, as you said, every city is going to be different. So who knows?
Well, we're going to find out, and that's what our job is here on the landlord, the younger landlords section. You know, the State Bar Association had a younger lawyers section where there was lots of partying going on. So I hereby declare that you and I are going to start a younger landlords section. And
sounds great.
I think that means you and me. I'm not sure, but I don't know. In any case, we are seeing new information come out on a daily basis. I expect over the next 7 days to get more information. We have several hundred people watching and listening right now, Ian, and I'm going to ask them to watch and report to you or me what they find, so that we can aggregate that information. That's a word I learned at Emory College. Aggregate. That means bring together. I think there are a lot of people in Smyrna who do not understand that word. I shouldn't use words that they can't understand in Smyrna.
But this is a very highly educated audience there, John, and we've got the top tier.
I think you're right. I think you are right. So I think this is very, very important that people understand that in the next few months, especially for your tenants that are already behind, this is a chance for you to recover the money that belongs to you, not to the tenant. It's your money, and you need to be proactive on this. There used to be a show in Atlanta. Those of you that grew up here, which I did. Ian, where did you grow up?
Well, I've been in Atlanta now for 40 years, so I'm looking.
Oh, you're a newcomer, a relative newcomer.
Hey, okay. I remember the pink pig.
I do. Well, I always had dreams of barbecuing the pink pig from Rich's.
Okay. Well, remember when Lenox Mall was a open air mall?
I do not. We couldn't afford to go to Lenox. We did all our shopping at the Salvation Army thrift store, which moved around a lot.
Okay.
So what can I say? Anyway, this is your money, boys and girls, and Ian and I are going to try to help you get some of your money, hopefully all of it and more, by taking command of this process and procedure. Special thanks again to George Kelichek. George, you are hereby awarded the position of Senior Fellow and Distinguished Research Professor at the Atlanta-based Nonprofit Institute for Real Estate Policy. Which,
congratulations, George.
Oh, George, a great guy. Margie says we have a question here, so let's take that. Gary, hi Gary, thanks for waiting and welcome to the program. Gary says, I recently had a tenant that left with rent and damages owed. I want to take them to small claims court. They moved to a different county in Georgia from where they rented. Which county courthouse do I need to file in? You file where the property is located. However, they will be served in the county where they have a residence. I think that is correct. Ian, I am not an attorney, and I don't think you are, but I believe that you file the dispossessory in the, I know they've already moved out, but you can't take possession if if there says here rent and damages owed. I suppose you would need to talk to an attorney for that. What you're asking is what's the proper venue, and I don't know the answer. My thought would be there's nothing to stop you from filing a dispossessory, and then paying a process server for about $100. You can, if you'll tell a process server where somebody is, they'll go find them and they will actually get a signature. And the beauty of that is then if the former tenant doesn't answer the summons, you'll get a summary judgment. And you'll also get a writ of possession, which at this point you probably don't need or want, but it's beside the point. Once
John,
the judge,
John, I think there's 2 points here that I'd like to ask you about.
Please.
So the 2 points are possession and money. I would say the top priority for our caller, our questioner, is possession. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I would, as soon as this program was over, in 3.5 minutes, I would drive to the property. I would take possession of the property and I would secure the property. And by securing the property, if I had to, I would change the locks or have them rekeyed for the protection of the property. And then I would take photographs of the interior so that I have a paper trail. I would take notes, contemporaneous notes of what I found at the property, whether it appeared that it had been abandoned. This guy says they left with rent and damages owed. So I'm guessing I have, okay. Gary says he has possession, but wants to get back rent, get paid for the back rent and the damages. Gary, you say you have possession, but I have had attorneys tell me that if there is a lease still extant, even if they appear to have abandoned the property, if you seize the property without a writ of possession, they theoretically could come back and say, hey, we just went on vacation and now we're suing you for throwing out our beautiful garbage that we left here. So, okay, lease expired and he did not renew. So Gary has an expired lease. Go ahead,
John. I
Ian.
would add one more thing to that, because I exactly agree with you, except to be a little bit more thorough and to be consistent with what those attorneys are talking about. Even though the lease is expired, Gary hasn't gone into detail about what's left, but a couple of quick things I would say is, did he turn in the key, and do we have that in writing that the key has been turned over? Because would you agree that's possession?
For my purposes, no. I would go ahead in the county and again, I would encourage Gary to contact a real estate attorney on this, but this is what I would do. And this is probably the wrong answer, but I've been right more often than I've been wrong. I would go ahead and file the dispossessory.
I agree.
In the county where the property is located. That's just to get it into that court. The beauty of that is, and then I would pay a process server to get personal service in the county where the person is located. The beauty of that is that if the tenant does not answer the summons, or if they don't show up, and there's about a 50-50 shot, I'd say maybe 70-30, that they will not, because they're going to think, hell, this is back into Cobb County. I live in Cobb County now. I'm not interested. Then the judge will be offended, and the judge will award me possession and a dollar amount judgment, which all I have to do then is record And it does, get the tenant can try to come back later and say, wait a minute, 4 years ago, the procedure you used was wrong. I'm going to say, I don't know anything about 4 years ago. I know this is a judgment. It was signed by a judge and it's recorded and it's on your record. And if you want to buy a house, you're going to have to go through me.
I think also, John, it's a very wise way of doing it, what you just described, because I did have a situation like that. And the sheriff got upset because they came to an empty house, but I didn't care. I could be saying the wrong term, but I wanted to go through the procedure of operation of law, because what I was really trying to do was get the furniture out, but I wasn't about to let the furniture leave the house because they could have said they had cash inside the furniture and they wanted their cash or whatever.
Absolutely. And that is always getting a writ of possession is always the safest way, but typically I don't waste my time with it. And we have gone through that procedure in the Landlord Survival Guide. And we now have included in the killer lease what has been adopted, Ian, in California and Florida, which is, and this is both case law and statute in the case of California. In Georgia, landlord tenant law is silent on this issue. Okay. What constitutes turnover of possession? Well, as you point out, if they tell you, if they give you in writing, we are leaving on this date and here's the key, then you have possession. But if they just disappear, you can't know. Well, I've come to the conclusion that I can't wait potentially 6 to 8 weeks to get possession of the property with the sheriff there. And so what I do is we have included in the killer lease provisions that say if any two of the following 5 circumstances can be documented, then all parties agree that this is a presumption, that it is agreed by everyone that the property has been abandoned. And once
excellent.
we declare the property abandoned, then I have an obligation to secure that property, and I'm going to do so.
Thank you, John. I think Gary can benefit from that because I'd like to ask you a follow-up question.
Sure.
I love that. I mean, that makes so much sense that the killer lease has something, a mechanism, and has something that a lawyer and the judge can look at, and we're going forward. It's not silent on it, and nobody has to assume. But the question I have is, because I've been in Gary's shoes, and I'd like to ask you, what I did in my situation as I was waiting for the courts to do everything, I put all the furniture that was abandoned in the garage. I put whatever stretch wrap around or something, I cordoned it off. And then I continued to show the property. My goal was by the time the sheriff showed up and I got real possession, I already had a new tenant. And that's what, you like my idea. Thank you.
I do like your idea. And I think people do need to be aware that if you take possession of an apparently abandoned house without a writ of possession under the supervision of the sheriff or marshal, as the case may be in your county, and there's something of potential value in there, you better be daggone careful, because these people can come back later and, as Ian points out, say, hey, we never left. But what did you do with our heirloom antique furniture that was worth millions of dollars?
Yep.
Okay. And they're going to come after me because I'm the biggest target in the room. And so, Ian is exactly right. Ian, I agree with you 100%. There has to be a paper trail of what you did with that furniture. But again, in the killer lease, we say what the procedure is, and the landlord must, according to the killer lease, and this is from California statute, the landlord is required to make reasonable efforts to locate the missing tenant. And I would document those. And what I would do is I would call everybody on their application. What I would do is interview the neighbors. What I would do is maybe even run an ad in a notice ad in the legal newspaper.
Excellent.
Depending on if it was really valuable stuff, you could then say, hey, we put you on notice. We gave you a reasonable time period to contact us. I talked with your mother. She said she had no way of reaching you, which I find hard to believe. And I think a judge would find hard to believe. So anyway, just some thoughts here. Ian, we've got to wrap it up. You and I have a topic all ready for next week. Harry has a question. Harry, thanks for waiting and welcome to the program. Harry says, what is the email or web address again to review today's seminar? The answer is, Harry, I have your email address and I'm going to send you an email this afternoon. You will always be able to get the replays by going to realestatecoffeebreak.com and clicking a button that says replays. Always. But in addition to that, I'm going to encourage Harry, you and Gary, and all the hundreds of other folks that were kind enough to visit with us today to subscribe on your favorite podcast directory. And I hope we'll be there very soon. We are on Apple Podcast, formerly iTunes Podcast. We're on right now. I think we're on Stitcher, but I'm not sure. We will be if we're not. And we are working diligently to get on Google Podcasts. Everybody has their own procedure, and this is, I admit to being a fuddy-duddy old guy. Ian is cutting edge, everybody. He knows all this tech stuff, but not me. But anyway, Ian, ask Seth, if you would, if he knows about how to get on various podcast directories, and if so, if he would be willing to help us, because Margie's a genius, but even she has been struggling with this. Okay.
I will do that, John, and I think everybody should come back next week because we'll figure out all together how to get that $25 billion.
That's exactly
motivation.
Look, I don't mean to discourage everybody who's listening right now, and it's after 1 o'clock, but Ian and I plan to split the $25 billion between us, and then we'll ration it out to our listeners and viewers. Gary says, all was done by the book, just want to get paid, but have seen that you should file where the defendant now lives. Gary, if what you're seeking is a small claims court damages award, the answer is yes. It would have been easier in landlord court in a dispossessory proceeding, but if you have abandoned that, then yes, you would have to file in the county where the person lives. And they moved out. They signed a move out form and voluntarily turned over the keys. Ian, you were right. I was wrong from the beginning. And as usual, this is why you keep me around, just to make you look good. Folks, we have got to get moving here. I appreciate it more than you know. And that's the 3.0 Mark IV. The Real Estate Coffee Break with Ian Robbins and John Adams. And this is John Adams reminding you, your financial future is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice. Make it a good one. So long, everybody.